Well, again, hi everyone. My name is Hillary Flint. I'm Director of Communications and Community Engagement here at BC-MAC. And after losing my home to invisible chemicals this past year, I've dedicated my life to educating people about the harms of petrochemicals and plastics. And along those lines, today we will be talking about the plastic industry right here in Beaver County. So there is a lot going on here. We're not going to be able to cover everything going on in Beaver County today, but I did want to give you a kind of a primer. So I'm going to share screen. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. And I will also state I am not a chemist or a scientist. So luckily we have Dr. Lau here who will be able to answer any of those technical questions. All right, can everyone see my screen? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. So when we talk about the plastics industry, really we just have to start out talking about industry in general. So in Beaver County alone, there are 734 regulated facilities. Those are not all plastics facilities, but it's important to understand how many facilities are dealing with chemicals in our area. Two towns that have the most facilities are Aliquippa and Beaver Falls. Of these facilities, I was concerned to find out that 87 currently have violations and 188 facilities have had violations in the past 3 years. So that's pretty concerning. And again, while all of these facilities aren't related to plastics product manufacturing is actually the 13th most popular industry in Beaver County. So it does really take up, a lot of the workforce here. And I think that's important to highlight when we, even when we talk about the harms of that. I also found out that Pennsylvania ranks 12 out of 56 states based on toxic chemicals released per square mile. So we're gonna drop some links in the chat that can help you kind of research these things yourself. So one of them are the EPA's toxic release inventory tool, and it tracks any toxic chemical spilled, whether that's in the water, in the air, any type of violations. And you can go in there and actually go to your own neighborhood and see exactly what facilities are around you and any type of releases that they've had. There are 33 facilities in Beaver County that are on the toxic release facility list. We also have the ECHO tool, and that is another way to track different facilities in the region. And we're just going to drop some additional resources in the chat. Like I said, there's so many. I had no idea. Obviously we're called Eyes on Shell, but there's way more than Shell. And that's scary. So we'll also drop in the chat the oil and gas watch database. When we talk about plastics manufacturing, fracking comes before that. And so that tool will help you figure out if there's any compressor stations nearby, any pipelines, because today we're just talking about manufacturing facilities. And so I pulled these stats. I thought they were quite concerning. So of the top 5 chemicals released in Beaver County from facilities like this, there are some pretty serious ones. They're separated out by water and air. And unfortunately, Shell is the #1 offender in this topic. So this data was from 2022. I really want to point out there's no more recent data in this database. But in 2022, you can see they had a large amount of air violations. So what plastics are made from petrochemicals? There's a lot of them. So we have this list here, and I will say, so Shell produces #2 and #4. And then for consumers, 1, 3, 6, and 7 are the ones that there's a lot of concern about toxic chemicals. So I'll give you a second to look at those. Phoebe, do we have any questions in the chat yet?
Not yet.
All right. So we'll move on to the facilities in Beaver County. So we're starting with the one we all know. I don't know if we love though. So Shell creates they have ethylene and they turn it into different types of polyethylene, which is the next step in the manufacturing chain. There's different grades of polyethylene that make different products. And Dr. Lau is great at explaining out, what exactly this means. But I think it's important when we talk about the shell plant that we realize it's not just one step in the plastics process. So they have an ethane cracker there, 3 polyethylene units with storage. They have a cogeneration plant, cooling water facilities, a water treatment facility, flares, multiple warehouses. So this is a really, really big operation and certainly the biggest operation in Beaver County. But what is surprising is that Shell is not one of the top 10 employers in the county. They're actually number 13. And then that leads us to the next facility, which was a real big surprise. VECA. VECA is a facility that just got on our radar when I was looking into this list of who are the, top employers in Beaver County. Surprisingly, I found out that VECA employs more people than Shell. They're actually the number 7th largest employer in the entire county. And their website says they're the largest extruder of vinyl lineals for the window and door industry. And they create PVC vinyl extrusion, which is used for things like windows, doors. A lot of people have seen it on the outside of houses, fences, decks, and railings. Dr. Lau, I know that you had mentioned you were looking over the chemicals that they release. Do you want to let everyone know what you found out?
Well, one of the questions being a PVC extruder, whether or not it would release poly or not vinyl chloride, what was involved in the East Palestine derailment. And actually on their list, that wasn't listed. But one of the chemicals I found that they did have, and on that database that Hillary shared with you, you can see that you can actually look at the different speciated compounds, but one of them is dimethylene diisocyanate, which is an isocyanate quite reactive and very toxic. So just interested in what they're doing. They must be using it for some kind of coating or something.
Yeah, so this is a new facility on our radar, and I know we will be doing more research on what goes on there, and so will our partners, Three Rivers Waterkeeper. It was a surprise, like I said, to find out that Shell isn't the biggest employer, and they're not running, at least when it comes to people power, the biggest plastics operation in Beaver County. So keep this one on your radar. We will post updates as we find out, but it is good that we don't have to worry about vinyl chloride out of that facility because obviously that's a very, very dangerous product. All right. And next up is this one in Beaver County, people call it many different names. So it's the former Nova Chemicals facility. Technically it's called BVPV Styrenics, but you probably know it as Styropec. So this is actually a Texas-based company, and they are the number 37 largest employer in Beaver County. So they make all of these different products that I'll let Dr. Lau explain. But again, similar type of products to the other manufacturers in the area. So types of polystyrene. Dr. Lau, can you let everyone know what expandable polystyrene is?
That's your white clamshells. All the white styrofoam cups and clamshells, those are all made out of expandable polystyrene.
Awesome. Interesting to know. Now, the way that this facility became on our radar was through our partners with Three Rivers Waterkeeper. They'll be joining us later and they're going to explain the ongoing lawsuit they have against Styropec. But essentially, they were doing what we call nurdle patrol, is where they go out on the water and they look for tiny little plastic pellets around the outfalls at the Shell plant, Styropec, all the different plastics producers on the Ohio River. And they found all these pellets that they thought could likely be shells. But they ended up being Styropex. So they have an ongoing lawsuit with them and have had to do like a lot of research on what goes on there. So Jess will talk more about that when they join later today. And then this is another one that's pretty well known in Beaver County. So BASF, they are a European-based multinational, largest chemical producer in the world, according to their website. So they make different types of resins and additives, colorants, again, more chemicals that should be of concern and have been in the past. They do not make the list of top 50 employers in Beaver County, and that definitely surprised me. And the last one we're going to talk about in detail today is something that we've really had to pivot and pay more attention to. The Valspar Sherwin-Williams plant in Rochester. So if you're a Beaver County resident, you probably remember the Rochester fire that happened a few years ago at this point. And with Eyes on Shell, we get all these resident reports. And some people might say, oh, I'm smelling this, or I'm hearing this. And our group figures out what is the source of those complaints. And what we found out was a lot of the smell complaints were coming out of Rochester, which of course isn't super close to the Shell plant. And that's when we realized that Valspar, that's where they are. Hillary O'Toole, our executive director, drove there and could actually smell it. And I believe the DEP gave Cliff a little bit of an update on what was happening at Valspar. Cliff, can you explain how Valspar is connected to plastics and petrochemicals and what the DEP told you about the operation there?
Yeah, again, this one's got confusing names. It's actually Sherman-Williams owns it, but both Valspar and Sherman-Williams probably familiar as a coatings company, paint. And so they make the ingredients for paint. And since Sherman-Williams took it over, they've had some violations of smells and odors and stuff. And so they are getting, and the DEP has sent me a new permit for a incinerator to be able to control those odors. So hopefully in the future, that plant will be much more under control. But we need to have you guys let us know if you do smell anything coming from that direction.
Yeah, and I think that fire that happened in Rochester by this plant was the first time people in Beaver County really realized how unprepared we were for these types of disasters. And it wasn't again until, of course, the East Palestine train derailment where we kind of found out we didn't learn any lessons for the response to the fires in Rochester. And so this is one I don't think a lot of people know about. In the research that I did, there's again many plants, but some of the other big ones were Trip Pro Tech, which is in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, Kenson Plastics in Beaver Falls, QCast in Rochester, Versatex in Aliquippa, Gruber Industries in Monaca, and a lot of these facilities are in the Monaca area around the Shell plant. So there's definitely a lot of concern about having these types of facilities so close together and some of the most populated areas in Beaver County on a waterway. There's a lot of potential for harm in that, a lot of potential for disaster. So this was just the beginning of our research into who are the other players in the plastics industry in Beaver County. And I'm excited to announce that we are working with Frac Tracker, who is going to make a custom map for Beaver County that will outline every single plastics manufacturing facility. And so that way you can go in and see them for yourself. So make sure you sign up for our social media and we'll be sure to update everyone once that product is done. But I'm going to stop sharing screen and we'll open it up for questions. And again, Dr. Lau is great at answering the science questions, and I'm happy to answer any of the community concern questions. So does anyone have any questions about all these harms we have right here in Beaver County? Was anyone surprised by some of this information? And if so, what surprised you? Because I learned a lot in doing this research.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Louise. My daughter got me on here, and it's really depressing hearing how many more plants are in that. I grew up in Aliquippa, and I own a home in Monaca, and it's very depressing. And I have, before the plant even started, I did try to there was things that were brought to my attention with my own property because Shell is in my backyard and Center Township is they're supporting them. And me as a citizen, um, they've destroyed my home. And so I am working with Fair Shake. And it's just I I know everybody is, everybody wants to fight. It's amazing to me because I went to high school in Center Township. I graduated in 1980. And I know a lot of people there. And it just seems like people are so busy trying to survive that they can't even pay attention. And then you kind of look, I feel like I don't want to throw it in their face, but I want them to see how bad this is. And my sister lives in Aliquippa. I can't believe all the things that are in Aliquippa. She doesn't have a clue. Like I talk about the cracker plant. Now I've become aware of hydrogen pubs, and
Hydrogen hubs. Yep, it's an upcoming threat.
well, from Frack Tracker, I found out that the Falcon pipeline is right near my property. I'm in the same watershed as Shell.
Oh,
And so I guess the little people don't matter. And Shell is just, they have so many the township closed me down for one little drip from an on-lot sewer in Poorhouse Run. Yet the cracker plant is going to discharge industrial waste into Poorhouse Run and the Ohio River. And every time I talk to the top people that made the plans, um, it's one deception after another. It's okay. And it is so clear that it is not okay. So it's I'm wondering if that house in Allegheny County, Crescent City, if that didn't have something to do with the pipeline. I know
Yeah,
they were saying
there's a lot of research around that right now. And I don't know if they've made a final decision, but Louise, we're really happy to have you here. We
thank
need
you.
more residents that, are willing to speak out like this and talk to their neighbors. And, you bring up a really good point. And I was having this conversation with some women in Aliquippa, and they said something to me, and it just rings true. They said, as a Black woman in this community, I don't have time to think about this because I have to think about so many other things. And, I think corporations are taking advantage of that. They're taking advantage of, people are struggling right now, and we don't have time or capacity, or sometimes hope to, stand up to these big corporations, and they take advantage of that. But I think when we band together and we do it, as one unified front, that's how we win against companies like Shell. And so, invite your friends to these calls next month, and let's just keep getting more people that are willing to, go out and stand up. So thank you for
You had
being here, Louise. And, we're trying to do as much as we can and push as many actions, but just as you said, some of the people higher up just they're not standing up for us, quite frankly.
Well, if you could just educate me on this, because I had to really educate myself. I'm exhausted but I'm gonna do it because, and it shells in my backyard and people were saying I'm crazy, this and that, but they're in everybody's backyard now. I'm just so close to them. And but if you can educate me on this, because I can't for the life of me, what about our town officials? I mean, why couldn't they like bring in an incline or some kind of tourist? Like I'm blown away that my Uncle Tony worked at St. Joe Lead. He walked to work of the trail of Poorhouse Run. There's a story about the poorhouse on Poorhouse Run, Pleasant Drive, Potter Township. It's history. That's why I know that area. I grew up there. And so I had a real issue with Shell, but I had a bigger issue with the township because I just keep hitting the wall and I'm a fighter, but I am so tired. And then people are just saying, why don't you just,
We won't be giving up, Louise. We have another educational event actually coming up this month. So tonight I'll end our call with just letting you know where you can come find us this month. And I definitely want to get together and, help you learn along with us, because I have to tell you, the minute I felt like I understood petrochemical industry in Beaver County, someone mentioned hydrogen hubs. Just like you said. And to be frank, I was like, oh my goodness, how do we fight something else? Like, we're still fighting this.
well,
So
compressed
I appreciate it.
nitrogen, nurdles, um, contaminated ponds, you know, all that stuff. I don't know. I keep asking people, well, how many people, I mean, what does it take? A natural disaster, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And
Or
we've been trying. So thank you for being here, Louise. I do see that Gail has her hand up. So
I want
Gail,
to
do you have
thank you
something you
real
want to
quick
add?
too.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you
of
so
course.
much. Yes.
Of course.
Yes, I have a question for Louise, and I feel your pain. I really do. To some extent, I don't live there, but I feel it because my friend Jim died in December 10th, and he lived within 3 miles of the plant. But I'd like to know, Louise, when you said that Center is supporting, I think you used the words supporting Shell. I'm asking, and I asked in the chat too, how is Center Township? In what way? Because I don't live in Center. I don't live in Beaver. How is Center Township actually supporting Shell? What are they?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you. Well, just as this is just my own personal story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't live there anymore either, but my friends and my sister is there, and I own a property less than a half a mile from the plant. I have 3 streams that are in the same watershed. So I'm watching every time I go back, I'm seeing all the changes of the earth.
But
But
how is Shell, how is Center? You specifically said
okay,
Center is supporting.
when I say center, I mean like the selectmen, the town officials.
There's so I think our executive director Hillary O'Toole is on here, and I know she's been going to some of the Center Township meetings, and there are some ways that the township actually is I don't know if supporting Shell is the way to say it, but they opted in to essentially it's a tax type of thing. Hillary, are you able to provide some clarity on that?
Yeah, I can try. I think the lack of, and Louise, I live in Center Township too. And my kids all attend Central Valley School District in multiple buildings. I think it might be, or I think Louise is thinking along the lines of, a lack of pushback is showing an agreement. And right now, Center Township is experiencing a tax hike. And I attended the borough meeting in, I think it was February, and they were talking about how when Shell came in, businesses like the mall were provided a increase in their tax assessment, and if they wanted to fight it, they could just, I forget the name, I forget what we call it, but they could file something to say that they didn't think that it was accurate. And so we're now, what, 3 years later, and the assessment came back in favor of the mall. And now there's millions of dollars that need to be paid back. And that tax responsibility is falling on the shoulders of the residents of Center Township. Now, I may be misinterpreting some of the information that I heard, so please don't quote me verbatim. And please, the Center Township municipal office welcomed questions and comments. So I would encourage you to visit their website.
Oh, ma'am, I have been on the phone with them. I have
Oh,
been on the
really?
phone. Yes, I have been on the phone with them. I know this is being recorded and I should probably be careful, but my own personal with the Center Township, I'll just say it. They gave a lot of money and they did a lot of improvements with the road. Shell has put a lot of money into the community there. And with businesses and stuff. And they built a lot of roads and they spent a lot of money on the roads to get that ramp going, and Toys R Us, they took all that out. The Beaver Valley Mall is practically dead now. But I'm a citizen. I have a property there, and I had a sewer permit too, an on-lot sewer permit. I had one violation, and I didn't have the money to put the septic system in. So they closed me down. But they should have never closed me down. I should have been grandfathered. Now they grandfathered the cracker plant. I don't know if any of you were at the meeting December 2016 at Central Valley High School. People were outraged because if you look it up online, it's online with the DEP. This is how I found out. I never had planned to sell my property. My Uncle Tony left it to me. I grew up there. It has never been empty. And now my property is empty and falling apart. And Center Township has blocked it. They put barriers on the top of the road, denying me access to my own property. Now I feel like the reason why they're denying me, and I know my feelings don't count, and I am not saying anything I don't know for sure, but I'm going to find out. I feel my land is contaminated down there. And now that you've named all these other plants, I'm so focused on the cracker plant because they were in my backyard. They personally have caused me like a lot of harm, like just financial hardship, backlash. And with the township, I just feel like they do everything for the Shell plant, but they can't even repair my road so I could get to my property. Instead, they blocked it.
I'm
Yeah,
so
and
sorry,
I
Liz.
I feel your pain there, and it's just another example of how, we'll bend over backwards and let these giant billion-dollar corporations, do things that can cause us harm, but when the everyday person can't do something that is a requirement that's frankly unreasonable half the time, they get punished, but these big corporations don't. And it's not fair, but how we win is we come together like this. So I look
Well,
forward to it.
I'm so close to the plant, and because of the waterways traveling through my property, I know they don't want me there. And I feel like they did that to me. Now that I feel like a fool. I feel like I've been fooled, like this was all planned. And it just keeps getting worse for me. The more that I push for my rights, the more backlash I get, and the more that they make me feel like it's just how it is.
So what they do in these neighborhoods, they come in and when they're looking at cost and where to put things, and they call us externalities. So we can be an external cost to them. And it's also referred to as a sacrifice zone. So, honestly, Beaver County at this point is a sacrifice zone. They come in and they know that there's other corporations in the area that everyone can point the finger at each other. And we are the people that pay the price, and it's not fair, and we have to fight back against this narrative that we need the plastic industry to survive in Beaver County. It's supporting our economy. We're actually hosting an event on April 10th where we will have Ben Hunkler from Orvie, who will be talking about the ways that it is not true. Shell is not supporting the economy in the ways that they claim they are. And actually, the reports that say otherwise were paid for by Shell. In my personal opinion, I think that that's propaganda. And so, we'll put in the chat how to come to that event, or you can also listen on Zoom. But yeah, it goes really, really deep,
Well,
unfortunately.
that's why I want to say something to the lady that asked me the question is about Center Township. Now, again, I know I'm not a politician or I'm not sophisticated in politics, but I sure had to learn because I just couldn't believe, like, well, why is this happening to me? But I know there's something behind it. And I mean, there was much more that happened to me, but I'm going to leave it at this. And I came on here, I probably shouldn't because I don't know, but I thank you so much for educating me, but I do feel I'm mad at I'm mad at Center Township. I'm mad at whoever brought in the cracker plant because I feel like they're using the good, hardworking people there as guinea pigs.
I,
And
yes, I agree.
yeah, okay, so an explosion happened on Ivy Lane in Center Township, right? Let's hush it up. Let's pay the people. They lived there their whole lives. Their house goes to ruins, but money is going to buy it. And it's like a drop in the bucket for them. That's what I'm figuring out. We could sue them. I mean, I've been reading somebody's suing them. I saw a local man is suing them, but it seems like, okay, they pay. Who gets that money? Like when
So
they sue, I got a feeling it goes right back to them.
in the case of the person who has a case against Shell, I believe it's going to be a class action, and they're exploring that option. I don't have further details on that, but that would be something where if residents did opt in, they would get a portion of whatever money is won. But again, I don't think they've made the designation of it being an official class action. Dr. Lau, I see that you've had your hand up. Do you have something that you want to mention?
I just wanted to learn, and Gail's question about Center Township. What we know is, in building the plant, they Shell was going, the property was going to be on where Center Township was taking their water out. And so, Shell has given Center Township a lot of money to build its new and revamp its water treatment plant up there by the mall. And I go up there sometimes. It's a good place to take air samples stuff. And I don't know how much, but it's quite a nice facility now with all the work and building, and that's all being, as far as I understand, paid for by Shell since they had to move their water inlets. So again, you're not going to complain about somebody that provides you with all that money and stuff. And also, I wanted to say I put in the chat with the database that Hillary was using, where it gives you the emissions of all the different companies if you put their names in. And I put the one in there about Valcar and show you what they emit. And I got looking at that database because part of what we're gonna be talking about is Shell has to apply for a Title V permit, which is a regulation for their emissions. And so I wanted to check and see what Title V's, the other companies that Hillary has talked about, what they had and what kind of goals and stuff they had. So their Title V's, you can find them in there and look through those to find out what a Title V is like and what we have to work on to get Shell Title V to look like.
Well, and also there's that now Chucky Better's just sold to the big steel company. So now that's coming in too. I feel like they're all going to be working together.
Yeah, we had a call where we mentioned how that particular developer is tied to a lot of these corporations. We have been doing some research on the proposed new facility in Aliquippa, what they're calling green steel. So we're trying to figure out, you know, what does that really mean? But I agree. It definitely feels like they are all in cahoots sometimes. Terry, I see you have your hand up. Terry, you're on mute if you want to.
I didn't mean to say in cahoots. What I meant by that is the industry, it might as well just be called industrial, and everybody should be moving away so they can have
Yeah,
um,
and you know that the more facilities that go in, the more that opens the door to possibilities like that. All right, Terry, I see you're there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Louise said about lawsuits and mentioned that Clean Air Council and Environmental Integrity Project are also suing Shell. That's not civil action. I mean, that's not a civil action suit. It's excuse me, it's not the same thing as the man who's suing Shell. But that is over the violations that of the Clean Air Act that Shell had during its startup. And I also wanted to go back to what Louise said about who's responsible for bringing the plant here. And that would be the state. But it also had the endorsement of our local political leaders, including our commissioners. And just wanted to clarify those things.
thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to figure all that out. You know, and that's how I heard about the hydro hubs. I mean, I'm really following it. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I do my research. Now, I could be wrong on this, but now how I heard about the hydro hubs was from that Mr. Shapiro is letting it come to Pennsylvania. So people are mad about that. But then I read that it's clean energy. But I
There's
don't.
a lot of false narratives. And something that's interesting is when we talk about hydrogen, there's multiple different colors of hydrogen, and they all have kind of different uses and different levels of being clean. So that's something, you know, we're actively learning about too. And I know the organization ORVI, Upper Ohio or Ohio River Valley Institute, has some really, really good reports about hydrogen hubs. So I will actually look for those and put them in the chat. I do see Gail has her hand up again. Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, I had put it in the question too, or in the chat. I want to know what happened to the requirements that Shell industry must be monitored by an entity independent of the DEP or Shell. What has happened with that? Who's going to be doing this monitoring? And will they also have to monitor the other industries too? Right now, everything is self-regulated. That is one of the biggest problems too.
Cliff, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring as far as independent
I can't think.
monitoring.
Yeah, well, they have to have an independent reviewer go in and take a look at what is happening at the plant and then report back. But it's so vague. It was so vague. It was mentioned oh, months and months ago. I can't remember the name. It had to do with the $10 million
Yeah,
yeah,
okay, yeah, so,
that settlement.
yeah, Shell has had to do some upgrade work on their flare system. And there is an independent engineering company that's doing that, and I've looked at their reports, and Shell has to report this. And what I find interesting about those reports somewhat is the same things that we struggle with when we ask Shell. They kind of give you some of the information, but not all the information. And I have to say, I can't remember the name of I can find the name of the engineering company, but they do seem to be doing a pretty good job, because I've seen emails and letters go back and forth saying, well, okay, you've got this, but now you haven't told us about that. So
well,
they are trying to uh, do the best job they can. So hopefully they'll be able to get those things to run properly.
And
okay.
Gail, if your question was based around the funds, the $10 million funds that were made available, that those decisions, like we don't know who got awarded those, it's not technically a grant, who got awarded that funding. But I will say BCMAC did put in a proposal to be one of the orgs that are doing some really great real-time air monitoring. And Dr. Lau and Hillary O'Toole put a lot of time and research into making sure that proposal was hitting every, thing that we can. But
Thank you.
we don't
Yeah,
know yet,
thank
if
you for
we're
that.
getting that or who's
Yeah.
getting that. But yeah,
My big distress is, and I think there are folks who have heard me say this before, I'm gonna say it again. I think that it would be very, very important for Beaver County to have its own Department of Health. Does not have a Department of Health. If it had a Department of Health that wasn't collecting data, wasn't doing the reviews necessarily, but was getting the information from the community and filtering that to I forget what division of not DEP, but the EPA. And let the EPA get in there and do the proper reviews. These reviews should be done much more extensively, not just the flaring, but what has to happen. And I've been involved years ago in Edward Deming's total quality management and how they go about establishing uh, how they go about establishing a whole total program for reviewing, and that's what's used in healthcare even today. That is the type of survey that I am talking about, where you are determined this needs to happen, and it's not happening. How can we get this to happen?
Yeah, and Gail, that's something I've personally been fighting for as someone who has gone through the experience of the East Palestine train derailment as a Beaver County resident.
Yeah.
It has really shown me how much we need a county health department. However, there is some very strange law where like a bunch of the counties in southwestern Pennsylvania have to also agree that we would all get a health department. It's kind of like an all or nothing law. But I'm going to continue to push for it because,
I will,
you know,
I will
combined
go,
toxic
yes,
exposure, where
yes,
there's
yes,
no one doing that research, no one getting that data. And as we saw in this call, we're not just being exposed to one facility or one type of chemical or just air pollution or just
right.
water. It's all of it. And if we're going to allow areas like ours to be sacrifice zones, how irresponsible is it to do that without arming the community, even with the basic necessity like a county health department? It's
Very
Right. Yet
unbelievable.
absolutely you need it. And I don't know what the laws are, but someone has to get to Shapiro or whoever the entities are, and start pulling the strength, get our people together and demand a county health department.
how does that happen? Like, how does that happen? You get a bunch of people and you go right to the place, or how does that happen?
That, Louise, that's what I'm always trying to figure out. I've tried to go to DC, I've gone to Harrisburg, it's just all about like continued, relentless, nonstop pressure and, continuing to build power. So, if every single county commissioners meeting, we show up with one more resident, it's like they see, more and more people are catching on. And so that power building is really what we're focused on as an organization now, because we have been trying to go to the commissioners, to state reps, to all types of different people, and they just keep saying, oh, it's the same people coming and telling us this. And
I
we're
keep
saying,
going in a
there's
circle.
more.
I
Yeah.
keep going in a circle. I keep talking to people and trying to be very polite and get my answers, but I find I keep going in this circle. And then when I come around the third time, now they think I'm a little bit off, because now I'm angry, because now I feel like I'm being misled. And I feel like I've been played a fool. And it's
There's a
just,
lot of gaslighting, that is done. I don't want to say purposefully, because I obviously can't speak to someone's intent, but that has been my experience with like every level of the government, is that they all just point their fingers at each other, and then you end up back where you started, and they give you a different story. And that's why, keeping records of these conversations is really important. Going into these types of meetings with other people so that you have other, witnesses, and contacting the media. Something that, I did for a meeting in Darlington Township was I invited the Beaver County Times to come and sit there while I plan to ask our township supervisor a lot of hard questions. Because that way it's a level of accountability. It's going to be in the paper. And so those are some ways we can do it. But like I said, we just have to keep doing it together and growing. And I think that that's how we'll get some movement. Terry, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you have something to add?
I would just, yeah, I did, but I just move on to the point about townships. I went to a meeting, a township meeting in Darlington, and there was a big turnout of residents to oppose a Bitcoin operation, a crypto operation coming nearby, and it was effective. They were able to convince the supervisors not to run with this. And so I just suggest that people can, if you can rally other people and come to the township in numbers, I think that makes a difference. And I think reaching out to your state representative also makes a difference. Find out who your elected officials are and let them know your voice. That's all.
thank you. Well,
Yeah.
that's good news.
So I just have one more question. I would love to go to would it be the Center Township? Would it be the Beaver County Township meetings? Which meetings? And what strength would I have at all, since I don't live in Beaver County? That's, I have something to say, but I'd need to go with somebody who lives in Beaver County to
Yep.
make what I have to say of any value.
So something that we're putting together, because Shell has to apply for this Title V permit.
Yeah.
I know Hillary O'Toole put together a calendar of all the different municipal meetings so that we can go and we're working with Environmental Integrity Project to go and educate those townships about, what this process looks like. And, I'm sure we would be happy to share those township meetings, and maybe, as a collective group, we can say, hey, we're all going to this one. I know Terry's done a really good job of going to Potter Township meetings. Hillary goes to Center Township. Cliff makes sure he's at all of the local emergency planning committee meetings. And we did go to a lot of county commissioner meetings over the past year or two. And I will say it got to the point where they're not budging. They're not budging right now. And so we'd kind of decided to, instead of continuing to pressure the commissioners, what we really needed to do was educate the people, right? We had to take a different tactic than we did in the past year. And I think that, I see a lot of new names on this call. So that tells me, that that's working. And so then we can go back and bother the commissioners. But yeah, I think it would be great to pick some township and go. Terry, has there been any updates on the Potter Township lighting study? Is that something that we should go and put some pressure there?
No, I don't have any right now, but we will keep up with that and let you know.
And I
mean,
will
I should
share
say,
too.
I'm sorry, I should just say that Shell is again, at last report, Shell was again telling Potter Township, we're going to get this exterior lighting study results to you soon. But we don't know that that has happened.
Can
And
I ask one question? I know I keep, seeing things about all this infrastructure, I-376, all this infrastructure, all these buildings, and now all these chemicals. Is anybody like planning any kind of like health facility or emergency, like another fire station or things that if there was an emergency, they would be able to handle it?
I wish the answer was yes. This is something that we've continued to put pressure on as well, is did we learn lessons from the train derailment, right? Like, did we learn that the response there maybe wasn't great? And as of right now, I don't know of any plans of new facilities. What I can say is we're exploring what we can do to make something like that happen. Obviously no promises, that's huge, but we're exploring, what are the options? So the only thing that as a nonprofit right now, we can do is figure out how to educate those people that are in charge of health and safety. So we are working on a toolkit around that. But yeah, you're right. With added risk, you would think that we would have added security, and that doesn't seem to be the case. Bob, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe this might help answer that question. Within a lot of the industrial mills, they have their own fire departments. In the case of Shell, we've talked to the firemen that belong to the communities around there, and they were told to stay outside of the plant, stay outside of the fence line. So you're not going to get any outside help going inside the plant. I don't know what happens when if there's an explosion and they lose their fire department internally. That's a question yet to be answered. The other answer, dealing with local governments and the county commissioners, notice that the county commissioners have leased for fracking underneath the county parks and various county properties, which they're getting money for. That's probably why they're not budging. Also taking a look at other communities, municipal, like Economy Borough, where I think everyone on council has a lease to have their properties drilled with the mayor and the solicitor. That's what I was told when I went to those meetings. And I'm like, wow, you're not going to get those folks to budge either, because they're personally making money on it when they should all recuse themselves, because you're not allowed to do that if you're a public official, including the county commissioners. So there's a lot of pushback. We're running up against brick walls because of those issues.
I feel like they're making people get tired. Like I'm so exhausted, but yet I'm still gonna, I'm still trying. But when I look and I'm very glad that I came to this meeting. Thank you so much. But it's kind of hard to take. Like,
It is, and that's why, it's okay. It shouldn't be all on the residents. So, we try to do some of that work in collecting resources because it's an unfair burden. It's an unfair burden that residents, on top of trying to live in the current state of the world,
right.
that you would have to get up and do this type of research. It's frankly unacceptable. And we're very happy to have you today. And, keep inviting people. I did want to say I saw that Jess Frisk came in from Three Rivers Waterkeeper. Jess is going to give us an update on their work around the Ohio River in Beaver County. Jess, are you ready to share everything with the group?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Jess.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hillary, for inviting me again. Last year, we would sometimes come on and give some updates about the work that we're doing around the Shell plant. So I'm Jess with Three Rivers Waterkeeper. We work in southwestern PA on the rivers to monitor and protect them. We are a scientific and legal advocate, and that's important because some of the work that we're doing in Beaver County is specifically related to litigation. So I know earlier Hillary was mentioning some of the plastic facilities that exist within Beaver County, one of which is called BVPV Styrolinux Styropec US is the official name that it's called. So Styropec is literally right next to Shell plastics plant. It sits kind of along the Ohio and Raccoon Creek with outfalls on Raccoon Creek. We do monthly nurdle patrols with Mountain Watershed Association. So we're looking for tiny plastic pellets in our waterways to kind of prove that there is this abundant plastic pollution in our waterways. So during one of these monthly nurdle patrols on the Raccoon Creek, we kind of observed this excess of nurdles and they were different from the ones that we were finding on the Ohio River. So the ones that we were finding on Raccoon Creek were very small, like the size of poppy seeds. And we kind of followed them back to an outfall from Styropec. So we were finding that Styropec's main outfall and a few others were dispensing with their wastewater tiny plastic nurdles, which is a violation of the Clean Water Act because it's a violation of their permits. You're not allowed to dump solids outside of your outfalls. And so we reported this to the DEP. This was all the way back in December of 2022. So we reported it to the DEP, waited for follow-up. DEP did a visual inspection. They identified nurdles. They gave Styropec a notice of violation. And we were like, great, they'll stop hopefully putting nurdles in the waterway. Next month, we were still finding these tiny nurdles being discharged into Raccoon Creek. And this continued on for a year where we were reporting this to the DEP, reporting this to Styropec. They were telling us that they were working on it. Nothing was being done. So eventually, in October of last year, so October of 2023, we formally filed a notice of intent to sue the parent company of Styropec for alleged violations of the Federal Clean Water Act. And we're doing that with Penn Environment, with the National Environmental Law Center, and we hope to hold these polluters accountable. So currently we're in litigation. We want to protect people who use Raccoon Creek, people who recreate on it. So right now, it's been a few months since we filed this notice of intent. We have officially filed a federal lawsuit against them after our notice of intent needed it 60 days to be filed. We're holding off on this lawsuit right now, and we are still finding small nurdles. However, within the next few weeks, we are beginning negotiations with Styropec and the DEP to kind of figure out, what all their violations were, what they need to do to be held accountable, and what they will do going forward, and kind of how they will mitigate their pollution. So that's one of the big pollution or plastic pollution incidents that's going on within our world and also within Beaver County. We hope to share some community wins with that soon, so keep an eye out. And then also just, noticing the abundance of plastic pollution in our waterways. It comes from upstream, everything goes down. So the Ohio River gets everything from, the Allegheny and from the Mon. So during another nurdle patrol, when we were out there with Mountain Watershed Association, we kind of noticed that in these along the shoreline where there had been recently high waters, like now where it's raining a lot and kind of it's flooding, because there was high waters a few months ago, and then the river levels dropped back down. We noticed that along the shorelines, there was kind of like piles of drift. And so within that, our water keeper and our environmental scientist dug up soil samples. And we, with the help of amazing volunteers, we sorted the nurdles from this soil sample, and found a total of like 768 nurdles within only 11 square feet of riverbank. So that's just a small portion of the riverbank, and we found almost like 800 nurdles, which means, there could be more. It could be more concentrated in some areas, there could be less, but there are definitely plastic pollution in our waterways. And so we just are very concerned about plastic pellet sources in our region with commercial users and like those who are shipping it and those who are using like trains and barges to transport some of this material. So that's on the forefront of our minds. We want to stay poised to address this issue of plastic pollution, just like a lot of other environmental groups are. I'm happy to answer any questions, though I may not have the answers to everything. And if you'd like to stay updated, of course, you can follow us on social media and follow our newsletter. So thank you.
Thank you, Jess. And Three Rivers Waterkeepers doing amazing work, not only in Beaver County, but they are one of the only environmental orgs still doing testing in East Palestine after the derailment. So just flagging that, they rock. Marsha, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Jess, would you explain to new folks here tonight how dangerous those nurdles are to wildlife and creatures in the rivers?
Yes, I wish I had my jar of nurdles easily accessible right now so I can show what they look like, but they are these tiny little usually white circular plastic pieces that are about like maybe like really tiny. So sometimes they get mistaken as like food for a lot of wildlife. So birds will eat them, fish will eat them. They've been found in the stomachs of both of these animals, which is obviously dangerous because they fill the stomachs. It is hard for them to like pass these nurdles, and so they can die from eating too many and like not being able to consume them. Another thing that we're kind of finding out, so originally we were saying like nurdles are really dangerous because they attract toxins. And so they can become these sponges of plastic pollution, of toxic pollution and chemicals. But what we're also finding out now is the nurdles themselves can be harmful to human health. There are studies out there that are starting to correlate this plastic pollution with the sharp increase of colorectal cancer in a lot of younger generations that wasn't previously seen. So there are dangers to the environment, to human health, to animal health, all.
Thank you, Jess. And I'll get a hold of that information and try to post it on our Facebook page. Because I think that that's a point that, we talk about what this does to the environment and what it does to animals, but to find out that, it's also causing colorectal cancer. As a cancer survivor myself, that is terrifying. So thank you. And if anyone has any questions for Jess, feel free to put them in the chat. I do want to give Dr. Lau an opportunity to give kind of a plant update on what's going on at Shell and what he's figured out in the past month since you guys joined us last time. Go ahead, Dr. Lau.
I don't have any good news, and after all this other discussions, I don't know if I want to bring it up, but Shell has continued to putting out pollution. It's still exceeding its NOx emissions 12-month rolling sum. It has gotten better with its VOCs and HAPs and carbon monoxide as far as the rolling sum. However, they are supposedly, they've gotten all three polymerization units up and running. And we've noticed quite a bit of activity on CAM3, the continuous air monitoring unit that's over on that side of the plant. And I just checked it April 2nd, and during the evening hours and nighttime hours, they were putting out almost 300 parts per billion of total VOCs. So hopefully they've collected a summa canister of that and will analyze it and let us know. But the only trouble with that is they only collect the summa canister at the beginning when it goes over the trip value, which for CAM2 is 108 now PBBs. Once it gets over that, then they take its sample. We're also doing some investigation with their other monitoring system. It's called the PAM, passive air monitoring, where they put tubes out and trying to determine exactly, they've changed their procedure at which they've been reporting those values. And we're trying to find out from them what changes and how does that affect the results that we see with that. We can't understand the results if we don't know how they were obtained. And so we're currently going back and forth with Shell to get some clarity on that. So if anybody has always wanted to, has anybody seen anything or reported anything, let us know. Any comments along those lines? No one's seen any strange activity or?
Well, I know one of the girls that live, that visits my property, this was earlier when the weather was warm, after the derailment. She said there wasn't any minnows in the tributaries and the streams. Or like, I don't know, can the average, like, could anyone go and take a sample of the soil and the mud in the stream and the water at your property and have it tested, or do you have to have somebody that's an expert do that?
Well, it would be better to have someone sample it for you, because there's a lot of questions on sample integrity.
That's what I heard.
If you were to go there and just throw it in a glass jar, they can analyze it. But then if they come up with something that looks interesting or whatever, the parties that you may want to say, well, this is not good, they'll say, well, did you do this procedure? Did you do that? What was the integrity? Did you make sure the sample wasn't contaminated beforehand and all that kind of stuff?
So you got to get a professional to do it.
Yeah, so I hate to volunteer Jess, but I know the three of her have been doing some stream sampling, and I know they've shared some of their data of I'm trying to think, you don't call it the sediment. That's on the bottom up there in East Palestine, and been talking, and they get a lot different results than what the EPA gets, and we think that's partly due to the way they're sampling it and stuff. So I don't know if Jess would volunteer to maybe help you out and get a sample. And they might
Well,
go
no,
with,
well, the only problem with that is she wouldn't be able to get to the property because the township put barriers there. So you can walk to the property, but it's a hike. It's way down in a hollow, and coming up it's actually scary down there now. I used to love going there, but now I'm afraid to go there. But I know you're absolutely right. I have to have an expert, because if it did go anywhere, they're gonna want an expert to say, I think it's contaminated. Not only I think it's contaminated from the plant because the industrial waste. I don't know. I think they got those permits. They were trying to have them so they didn't get those permits because they were saying they should be grandfathered. But I think they got those permits, so they're allowed to dump industrial treated waste into the Ohio River, Poorhouse Run, Rag Run, and Moon Run. Those are tributaries, and those 3 tributaries run through my property.
What
So
Louise is talking about is how they were grandfathered in to
Horsehead
a
Corporation.
yes. So Cliff, do you want to explain to people what that means?
Yeah, when Shell was first doing its remediation of the land there and stuff, they said that they needed to have a water permit really quick to be able to do that work. And Horsehead had their permit there, and there was hearings, and a lot of us attended those and objected to it and stuff. But the DEP went ahead and granted the grandfather that in. And there are some things there that Horsehead was allowed to dump, and now Shell's allowed to dump. And the biggest thing that I see is that Horsehead's permit was quite old, and it allowed quite a high total dissolved solids amount in there. The more recent regulations have lowered that standard by quite a bit, but Shell indicated that they would not be dumping as much water as Horsehead did. So even if they dumped that high a total dissolved solids, it wouldn't have a big effect. But
I don't
concent-
believe that.
well, no, yeah, concentration. Even though you don't dump as much, it's still the concentration that will get you. So if they dump, 500 gallons of high total dissolved solid, that chunk of water itself is going to be highly toxic
Oh,
and can do a lot of damage. But they haven't exceeded their total because they haven't dumped a total amount of water. So that's the way they worked around that. And I know Jess may be able to speak on that because I know Three Rivers Water had an intern working on that and looking up all the legal documents and stuff, trying to find a way to fix that. But I don't think anything was ever found, Jess, right?
So there still could be like movement with that. I know that the permits that were grandfathered in kind of call for a lot more heavy metal, like higher heavy metal limits than should really be allowed at the plant. I think we did request for their permit to be reviewed, but we kind of have to really wait to make comments on that until their NPDES permit comes in for review, which I think is in 2 more years. I'll have to look into that.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everyone. I want to make sure we get to Lindsay. She's had her hand up for a while. Go ahead, Lindsay. Lindsay, you're on mute if you're speaking. Oh, okay. While Lindsay figures that out, Terry, I saw that you had your hand up. Do you still have a question or comment?
Just adding one fact to the discussion about the grandfathering, and that is that the initial grandfathering enabled Shell to be exempt from regulations that followed 2010. So, they the newer regulations after 2010, Shell was exempt from those because of the grandfathering. That's all.
Thank you, Terry. All right, Lindsay, and we're ready whenever you are, so just go off of mute. Oh, looks like she's entering again. I know phones can freeze sometimes, so we'll give her a second. And then after Lindsay asks her question, I'm just gonna give everyone an update on the events that we have going on this month. All right, Lindsay, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi there. Sorry about that. I first just want to thank you guys all for all that you do. I mean, it's really nice to be a part of this group. My mom and I joined together. This is our third meeting. And Dr. Lau said something that I wanted to ask if you guys noticed anything regarding this with the increased activity at night from the shell plant. My mom and I, the last complaint we made to the DEP was regarding during raining. We noticed that there were, we have images of it, large clouds that just, I mean, it was unreal how large they were and how you could see them from like a far distance. And I was just wondering, you know, regarding the rainwater, has anybody, has anybody taken samples from that rainwater? Is that something that kind of increases the risk of these, you know, volatile chemicals being kind of put out? I just was wondering regarding those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lau, you want to take that one?
Yeah, yeah, not the large clouds, we've been looking at this and a lot of the flares are steam assisted, the cooling towers, of course, put out a lot of steam and stuff. And we've noticed, and I'm working on trying to look at that Shell can actually somewhat could create their own weather conditions there, that the steam will go up and dissipate into the atmosphere, but then it goes up higher and it hits either a different relative humidity or a different temperature, and it'll actually reform clouds higher up. And so that can happen. But yeah, the clouds and stuff do accumulate any of the stuff that is given off by the plant. We've seen this before when there's low level clouds and they're using the flares, and we have that orange sky effect where some of the gases and stuff from the flares get trapped and the light reflects off of them and we get those orange cloud effects and stuff. So yeah, but it'd be hard to try to get a sample of the rain, and where would you sample it? And it might be quite diluted by then. But again, all of it adds up and is not necessarily good that it's being spread around even more than just going up in the air and hopefully being diluted and, you know, blowing off to some other place. Now it's actually maybe returning back to the ground close to where it came out. So
So
interesting idea.
Yeah, two things on that. we did go out and get a sample from someone's pond. This was sometime last week, I believe, and they just had kind of a weird film substance. And I had actually experienced that in Darlington Township after the train derailment. And so I can't speak as a scientist, but what we've noticed is in the areas that were affected by the train derailment, when it rains, everyone's health symptoms seem to get worse. And I had asked the federal EPA why that is. And at one point they gave me, I can't believe they actually said this, but they said, you know, increased humidity can cause off-gassing. So if you have chemicals that are, you know, stuck in soft surfaces, that type of humidity from really hot days, sunny days, rain can actually make them come back out. And you know, the idea that chemicals can come back down, that is true. After the train derailment, we had acid rain from hydrochloric acid that actually rained back down on the community. So the idea that chemicals can come back down as rain, yes, that can happen. Does it happen in and around Shell? I don't think we know yet. But when we
I could find out. because I'm so close. If I'm afraid, but if anybody wants to come and camp down there with me, there's the 3 tributaries. I got a feeling that if I took a camcorder down there and stayed down there, I would catch so much. I think that's why they blocked me. That's why I can't get down there. They told my sister not to go walk her dogs down there. And our property, the township told her, don't walk your dogs down there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So stay tuned on the research, and yeah, I think having a little watchdog party and trying to see what's going on would be smart. Bob, I see you have your hand up, and then that's going to be our last question before we go into our April events.
Yeah, I might be able to answer Lindsay's concerns. Night activity. We know that there's poor monitoring because of the self-regulation. If you could grasp that for a moment, there's no outside monitoring. They self-regulate. And when it does rain, that's an excellent time for them to dump into the air, into the soil, into the river. You have surface pollution. Everything spills from them train cars to any parts of the mill. Stuff gets tracked out. So you do have surface pollution, and it does go down storm drains into the river. And then in a lot of mills, you have secret drains that are turned on and off during a rain that would actually go into the river eventually through some type of pipeline. It's very common in mills during rains when we can't see and no one's going to check the river. So those are some of the things, a little reality check of what goes on in industry that the general public doesn't get to see, nor they're not going to turn themselves in because of self-regulation.
Yeah, we certainly see a lot of these things at night on days where there's extreme weather. When there is wildfire smoke passing through, those can be, very convenient times for industry to try to get away with some stuff. Go ahead, Terry.
She's muted.
My apologies. So I'll try to make this quick. I was down in Washington County on a frack land tour, and that's a chance to see what, how surrounded the people in Washington County are by all the fracking operations. And I realized that the problem of night inspections is not peculiar to the Shell plant. It also holds for many of the fracking sites as well. And I wanted people to know that BCMAC has talked with the DEP and the acting director of the DEP at one point about that problem. Some of the feedback, not from that director, but otherwise, has been that the DEP lacks the funding to pay the inspectors overtime pay at night. But I see that as the government's problem, not our problem. We need our legislator to provide that funding to the DEP. That's all.
Amen. And we've, BCMAC has taken those kind of requests we have and suggestions about how the DEP can, be better monitors. And we have taken those to our local politicians and will continue to do that. So something like approving overtime and funding overtime inspections and actually bringing equipment to those inspections, because believe it or not, sometimes someone's nose and eyes, that's all they bring. So we have made some very specific asks on that, and hopefully it'll get us somewhere. So stay tuned. I did want to let everyone know where they can come hang out with us again this month. We do have some in-person events, which is really exciting. So on April 10th, we are doing an event around the economic impact of the Shell plant. This will be in person at the First Presbyterian Church in Beaver. There will also be a virtual option, so you will be able to join from the computer. So we're going to have someone from Ohio River Valley Institute talking about their reports into the economic impact of show, and then we'll have some group discussions. We also have a documentary screening. This is a really exciting opportunity that we can only do because some of our wonderful partners like Beyond Plastics and Three Rivers Waterkeeper and Breathe Project and all of the wonderful people that you see listed on these flyers. So the movie Blue Vinyl is touted as the first toxic comedy. And it is essentially profiling a woman who is exploring the toxic industry of PVC plastics as her parents are residing their home. So, this connects back to vinyl chloride, which is, something that people in my area were affected by the train derailment. And there is going to be an EPA comment period coming up sometime over the summer. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to bring people together to, kind of get this information in a fun way. And after, we will be having an affected resident panel where people that have experienced the East Palestine train derailment, including Beaver County residents like myself, will be able to talk about our experience and kind of our lessons learned. These are all free events. So we really, really hope that you can make it out. Phoebe is going to put any of the RSVP links in the chat, and we would really love to see you and invite your friends, especially to, come to the documentary screenings. We have two options currently. I believe we're trying to add a location in Pittsburgh just to support some of our other partners that are in the city area. So we hope to see you there. I will also be speaking on a panel about the East Palestine train derailment with Riverwise. Phoebe's going to drop that in the chat. And BCMAC will be tabling at the Sisters of St. Joseph Earth Day event, a wonderful event that happens every year. And I will put that in the chat in just a moment. So come hang out. We're really excited. Obviously this is the month of Earth Day. And for those that don't know, the focus of Earth Day this year from Earth Day, the official Earth Day, is plastics. So, what we're dealing with here is a global issue. It's so much bigger than, just Beaver County, but we are a sacrifice zone and we need to be educating ourselves and everyone around us. So I'm going to drop those links in the chat, and also how to make an Eyes on Shell report if you have one. So if anyone has any questions in the next minute, go ahead and raise your hand.
On mute.
All right, everyone. If we have no questions, we'll stop, and we really hope to see you next month. We do this every month. It's the same type of style and just kind of a different topic. So make sure you follow us on social media, check out our website, and join our mailing list to figure out what we're doing next. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Of course, we'll be in contact, Louise, I promise.
Okay.